Hey, 3 Code Warrior, how's it going? What am I working on today? Well, let me transition over here. I am back on my old shenanigans. I am working on some stuff in the lab, probably build some stuff out today. Got some drawings I might want to work on. And then I'll be working on Linux. I'll be doing Linux for sure. But I might also be working on some HPC stuff that I'm doing. Infotech Ninja, how's it going? Maybe I'll pull this up. Let me get chat going. So if you guys want to hang out, I had a crash on my streamer bot. Let's see how streamer bot works today. It crashed a little while ago. Probably general stuff, but let's pull him up. I'll throw him on down here since I don't have my text to speech going on right now. Where's he at? There he is. Streamer bot coming up. Get some chat going. See if he's logged in on everything. Might take a little while to sync everything up. Let's see what we got there. Yeah, it works. You guys can see that. All right, I can probably pull this a little lower since I don't have anything going on behind there right now, so that's probably fine. Yeah, so what am I working on? Getting some stuff with the labs working. I had some questions about the labs. Oh, am I not connected right now? Might just be slow. Yeah, there we go. Let's see what are we doing here? Let me align myself real quick here. I just got off of on-call for the last couple weeks. I've been on-call for work, and I just got off it. That's one of the reasons I didn't hop on too much and we're in the last week at the college for my students, and then I start my last quarter going to college next week. So yeah, I've been pretty busy. Let's align ourselves. Where are we at here? In our bastion. See if anybody's connected. Nope. Nobody's doing nothing right now. That's fine. Let me get a test here. Let's see if that test goes through both sides. Yeah, okay. All right, good. Making sure. Well, then, let me pull this up. What does this thing want to do? It wants to update itself? I'll let it go to update itself a little bit. We won't work on that part just yet. Leith, how's it going? Yeah, we're just, we're not working too hard right now. We're just getting into maybe some HPC topics that I might be doing. Haven't really decided exactly what we're doing yet, but we have a fair amount of labs that we could work on building. Could also just do Linux stuff. Sending, how's it going? Hey, Sending, I thought you might like this. Well, actually, I think everybody might like this, but I'll show you guys. So the other day, I did a pretty long talk on... It was 3 hours and 40... What did it take me? It took me 3 hours and 58 minutes to get through. So I was practicing my talk. We won't do it right now, but this was what I was doing the other day. Well, anyways, I've been going more through it and adding more to it. And what I was going to show you guys... Let me pull this up real quick here. Is this... I thought this was kind of fun, was... You know, in the section where we were talking about how you learn, right? So the topic is learning Linux or whatever specific path people have. They're going to have different stuff that they want to learn. Some people want to do security. Some people want to do whatever. Just going through and stuff. And I realized as I was talking through it and stuff and showing all this stuff that I kind of always show, I didn't really talk much about how you internalize information. And I think there's some value in that. So I was going to show just these two slides real quick. We're not going to go into this too deep, but the goal is we don't just want to have a bunch of facts in our heads. I know I tell people all the time, I know all kinds of people that are smarter than me, but they don't necessarily do anything, or they don't have any like drive to. So it's not just about being the smartest guy in the room. I tell people this all the time. I know plenty of engineers way smarter than me, but like, when we get to the interview section, there's this question of if you can do the job. Like, can you actually get to a command line terminal and do this stuff, right? So then I also mentioned earlier in this little talk that there's only 2 things you do at a command line. This actually makes it somewhat simple right here. There's 2 things that you do at a command line. You set values and you check values. You're playing ping pong with the abyss, right? You're just sending values in, you're sending commands in, you're getting stuff back. You're either setting and configuring things or you're checking them, right? So anyway, so where I was going with this is I'm just going to show you guys real quick. Then I said that I'm a really big fan of the Socratic method, right? And this is a method that kind of, you can just think through how you know a thing or whatever. And there's two ways that I like to look at it, which is when you're learning systems, if it's your first time ever doing something cool, how would I know something, this and this and this? And then when you're investigating systems, how do I know a thing to be true, right? So these are kind of my things. So I added this slide and then this slide, which is what is the Socratic method? Because if I'm going to talk about it, I should probably show it to you guys. So it's an argumentative dialogue with disciplined questions that eliminates false assumptions. That's very important because people are going to come at you with all kinds of weird things when you're on calls troubleshooting. And that's, you know, why do they think the system's down? I've been on it and it says uptime 43 days. It's clearly not down, but what is down, right? And then the other one is, and then to determine how you know some truth, right? How do you know, like, how do we even define what truth is, right? But it's important to note that this is often an internal dialogue. If you do this out loud, people are probably going to think you're a weirdo. At least push yourself on mute if you do that. But then, like, there's these different categories of questions, which, by the way, this isn't prescriptive. I'm not saying you must do these 5 things as you walk through this. No. You're going to use these things in different parts of your life and career as you try to unpack what somebody's saying to you or what you're learning about. If you're trying to uncover some unstated beliefs and figure out like why something, you know, why we think something is the way it is, right? And then I also threw in like what's the systems administrator objective for each of these types of questions, and then how that applies to the concept of learning, which I mentioned earlier, and also troubleshooting, or what I say like investigating systems, interrogating systems about what they are doing and that kind of stuff. So anyways, I just pulled this up because this is going to be added in when I do in 2 weeks, we're going to actually do the event live. Well, live will just be us all down in Discord. So if anybody wants to go and do that with us, we're going to walk through all this stuff. Probably going to make it, if I have to imagine, we're going to go over 4 hours, but it's worth it, right? It's free. Anybody can come do it with us. If I have some of my more senior guys show up and if they want to split off into other rooms so that we can do interviews in the interview section, we'll do that. If not, we're just going to stick around and work through everything and get as far as we get. So I pretty much have, it's the September 5th, I think. I pretty much have that whole day blocked off to just hang out and work with people that want to do this stuff, right? Because I tell people all the time, like, this stuff isn't easy, right? It's not easy. I never said it was easy to get into tech. I just think it's very attainable for people. Also, that little thing up in the corner, in case any of you guys are wondering, that's I put the old Ranger camera back together. I had taken it apart a while back, and it's actually called Lily camera because we were watching Lily a while back, like a year ago on it. Lily is another dog in our family who sometimes comes and stays with us, and I redid it for my wife's little sand art. Now I did that for a while back, but I just decided because she fixed the sand art thing, so I just redid it. That thing should be drawn over there, but it doesn't look like it is right now. Actually, let me go make sure that's not frozen too. Hold on, it shouldn't be frozen. It's just on a Grafana page, but I want to make sure. Oh, that thing is moving around. There we go. Did that just snap into place? Yeah. We want that guy driving around. It looked like it was frozen for a second there, but yeah. Sending grounds. I'm telling you, I had an old D-Link camera. I mean, you could probably find, I think my camera is probably, gosh, if I had to guess, like over, well, I was going to say 10 years, but I don't know if it's 10 years old. Probably, oh shoot. For sure, like 8 years old. Anyways, the point is you can probably get one for 30 or 40 bucks, and then you just hook it up, and then, just have something on the dog. I'm sure nowadays there's even better versions of cameras and rigs and stuff. Also, sending, you might like this. I don't play with this too often, but I set this up the other day. And let me get out of here, guys, because this isn't what we're doing right now. We're not necessarily working on that right now, but sending, I hooked up. So I've told you guys I have a bunch of RetroPies laying around, Raspberry Pis that I've turned into RetroPies over the years. And what I have, let me turn this on real quick here. Actually, I'll flip over to this other one. So I went and bought like a little $20 input card, and now I have this where, if you guys have never seen this, I think I popped this up the other day just to show some people. I don't even know if I actually was live or I was just recording on it. But if you guys have never seen like a little RetroPie, I have, you know, I don't know, every game out there. So I built this in an old Raspberry Pi. I think that's a Pi 3 I got on this one. But I do have some Pi 4s and maybe one Pi 5 sitting in the closet. I need to go inventory all my stuff one day. Infotech Ninja works great for preparing yourself for interviews. Interview questions are getting wild these days. Since I'm sure that's true, Infotech Ninja. But I definitely want people. I have a whole section of that talk that's about getting into like the process of the interview, like what's going on in an interview. At the end of the day, there's two things people want to know in an interview, right? They want to know, can you do the job and will you do the job? So your job is to convince them that you're the person that they should hand the mantle of this responsibility of a operating system now that's going to, and when I say operating, I mean a system that is in operations to continue being in operations, right? I have this joke I've been telling people because I have to introduce myself to people in meetings and stuff. And I just, my one of my things I always tell them is, I've worked on hundreds of thousands of Linux systems now, some of which have still worked when I was done with them, right? Anyway, so this is the thing. If I were to go to any of these systems that I loved as a kid and go find any of these games. Now, there's one real super annoyance to this, and it's that the controller I'm using, it's the D-pad here, but then when it switches into game, it goes to this other pad. So I have to figure out how to fix that, because it's I could probably reprogram the controller, but I haven't had time to redo it. So I need to probably do that again. Chrono Trigger was fun. Oh man, there's some games there. I'll show one. Have you guys ever seen? Some of you might not remember this one. This was what we played in the 90s right here. The old Clay Fighter game. But we won't play around with this too long. It's just, RetroPies are great, man. I love them. I have, like, all the games ever. So let's see what this one looks like. We won't play it right now. But if you guys have never seen this one's fun. I'll just show you guys real quick. Yeah, see now, once it switches to here, I got to use the little D-pad, and I don't like that as much because it's I'll just go game start. Just if you guys never saw this, who am I gonna play? I will be Taffy, and we'll let the computer pick his guy. And I'll just show you guys this. This was like the old. That's how we used to do it back in the day. Let's see. See if I can even. I don't even have any buttons here. Oh, I'm getting whooped. So normally he's kind of like Dalzim if you guys have ever played any of the Street Fighter games. I'm just gonna kick the shit out of her from far away. But my intention wasn't to play games. Oh, I'm gonna lose. Oh, I'm down. All right. My intention wasn't to play games online and get beat up, but freaking game. I just wanted to show you guys that because I do have that hooked up if anybody has any old retro games they ever want to see, because I pretty much have all of them. Hold on real quick, let me message somebody. Sorry. I'm off of on-call, but I'm still taking the load for somebody who needed a little bit of help on something. Let me get that out of the way. Okay, we won't play with that stuff. That's not all that big of a deal. RetroPie at a bar that was displaying TTY0 with the warning default password still set. What was the RetroPie password, if I recall, was the user is Pi, if I remember, and the password was, I don't think it was default, but yeah. Change the category to retro. Yeah. If I was gonna play games, I actually, my favorite type of games to play like on those is if you remember the Super Nintendo game Seventh Saga, which is it's this really fun game until it hits this point where it becomes like one of the most, Pi Raspberry, you're right. But you hit this one point where it's just a freaking grind. It's just a super grind to get levels, because you can't get past like this certain area without like gaining a bunch of levels. And the cool thing about that one, I could pull that one up if you guys wanted, but that game has a really fun, just the way that it drops you down into like the fight scenes and then you're behind your characters, but still an RPG style game. I always thought that was kind of fun. Anyway, so yeah, that was just me. I've been distracted. Yeah, I played Super Nintendo. I had a Nintendo when I was a kid. Some of you guys remember I was born in the 80s. So I'm the oldest of the millennials. Some of you guys know. I gotta set up. I don't have to, but I want to set up all my HPC labs. I have all of these ready to go, and I have quite a few of these actually built. So the lab, I just have to go basically grab the stuff out of the Linux section. And then for some of you guys that have been around, what the HPC labs are going to be, they're all free up on Killer Coda, right? All these labs that we have are free, but that one is going to be part of a course that we do, and we're going to do the course in the professional Linux user group probably on Saturdays, starting, I don't know, probably after I get the dissertation done. I can't take on any more right now. I've already pushed the dissertation too far, and it's already reaching a breaking point there. But with the where was I going? With the oh, my brain's shutting down. Hold on. Music's too loud. It's bugging me. I'll turn that down a little bit. Let me think. Oh yeah. So, anyways, anybody that wants to do it with us in the course in the Discord, it's going to be free. But people that want to do it and pay for it, there's going to be I'm going to have it up on. I already have a little thing for it on LeanPub, so people can buy it if they want, and you get like a little certificate or something like that, right? Kind of like the certificates we do for anybody inside of ProLUG. Anybody that goes through the course with us, you guys have these little. Well, I can just find it on the homepage here, but something like this, you can go view the certificates that people have done. Shane, and anybody who's wanted to be on the front page could be, but we didn't. This was a volunteer only thing. You didn't have to be on the front page if you didn't want to, and that rotates. So if I refresh that, it may be one of the other guys. It may also be me. Yeah, so it pops up to me sometimes too. So yeah, it's kind of cool. Anyway, so that's coming one of these days. I've done too many things, so I can't keep avoiding the work I have to do, even though I really want to. Let me start putting together some of these labs. Maybe that might be a kind of fun thing. I don't know. It sounds more fun than it actually is. Maybe I won't actually do any of that stuff. I do have the drawings. I've been drawing out the drawings too, for what this stuff kind of looks like. And then I have all the planning on what's actually going on here as well. Yeah, lots of stuff going on there. Also, yeah, we're going to get an NVIDIA Spark one of these days in the lab environment. If you guys don't know about the lab environment, that's an environment that we run where anybody can connect into. If you need to get in there, you just go over to our Discord. You go down into the ProLUG Lab environment like this, and you look at the pinned messages, and it tells you how to get access. And then you can also see a bunch of other examples of people doing that as well, which nobody's on right now, but I know somebody was on last night because, well, one, we have logging of everything. Right, we log everything around here. Where's that? Here. Here's all our logging of stuff, right? I can see all kinds of things in here. I normally just look at failed logging, people that are trying to get in that can't, but I also can search for pretty much anything else in the logs if I need to. And I think those go back for like 14 days. But the reason I know that it rebooted or that something happened to it is because we have our little sandbox channel where our reports come, and we can see the capacity of the labs. We can see that Rocky one rebooted. Now that's what we expect to happen in the lab environment. People are going to reboot things. People are going to do whatever lab activities they want. We want you to reboot because then it comes up as a clean system for all that stuff. So, all right. Yeah, I just don't. As soon as I get on streaming and I start looking at stuff, I'm like, I don't really want to do anything. I don't really want to. It's probably because I've been on call and I had a bunch of call outs this last week. It's probably part of it, at least. I can think of one fun thing to do. We can do this. We can go and we can just do some basic Linux. If anybody wants to follow along, just practice our Linux stuff. Go to Killer Coda, and we'll just go play in there. Just touching hands on keyboard. We'll use probably my labs. That's fine. We'll just go do some Linux stuff. So HPC labs, they're not done yet. They're still under construction. Ansible labs are pretty well done, although I do have a lot more that I kind of want to add in there, as people have been asking about getting ready for RHCE and stuff like that. And I mostly have stuff in there for that. Well, not directly for that, but I could put more stuff in there that's directly related to that. But yeah, we'll go do some Linux stuff. We'll go set some stuff up here. And I'll start with DNS, I guess. I'll link this to you guys that want to follow along. Here it is. Boom. There we go. So let's go with, switch this over to dark mode. Because, you know, some people like dark mode. I thought dark mode would have switched this over, but maybe it'll do it on a refresh. We'll leave this for now. But anyways, it says your team's going to be doing some DNS work, and you got to figure out how to use the tools in your Linux system. So, right, you got to know your tools and practice with them well before. I tell people all the time, you don't want to be late at night working on some system or some call out and be trying to figure out how to use your tools, right? That's the wrong time for that. And if that's the case, then you got to be quick on your Googling or quick on your practice or whatever. But we're going to use some commands to figure out how our system's configured over here, right? Our system's hopefully doing the things it should do, but if we didn't know, how would we know? So we need to figure out how to use these tools, and then we need to check the contents of our file where we define our name servers, right, where we're going to resolve things from, and then do a trace route to some of the different ones that exist out there. Yeah, light attracts bugs. Fair. Actually, there's a great joke. If you ever get a chance with, go look up Norm Macdonald tells the moth joke. Go watch Norm Macdonald just lead you around for like 12 minutes just to find out the punchline has to do with, well, because it's a moth, right? It's the moth joke. So go read about that. That one's pretty good. Well, anyways, we can come here and we can do host Google, and we can find that the host, so Google is www.google.com, and we can resolve what are the A and the quad A records. The A records are right here. A records are IPv4 addresses, which show up in what we call dotted decimal notation, which is just a representation of 32 bits in a numbering scheme that each one of these is going to be what we call an octet, and each of those octets is 8 binary digits. They have the states of nature between all zeros and all ones of 0 to 255. So those are the representations that can happen here, the numbers 0 to 255, right? Then you've got your IPv6 addresses here, which are going to be your quad A records. So there's 4 A's in those DNS6 records, right? And or IPv6 records, they're called quad A records. And this represents 128 binary digits, but each one of these is hex. So this 2 right here, like a 2 up here, if you just had the number 2, would represent 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. It would be 6 zeros, a 1, and then a 0, right? Because that would be the binary digit for 2. But this is different because this is a hexadecimal 2. So this 2 is representative of 0010, right? Which is just a 4, a little nibble or something. Then this is 4 zeros, this is 4 zeros, and then this is 3 zeros and then a 1, right? To represent the digit 1. Similar to that, 4 would be 0100, 8 would be 1000, 6 would be 0110, and the 0 would be 4 zeros, right? That's how you read those if you care. B is kind of fun because that's 11, right? B is the number 11 if you want to think of it like that. But in binary, it's in hexadecimal, when you switch it over to binary, it's the 8 position on. There's no 4, but then there's a 3 and 2, so it's a 1011, right? And you don't have to memorize those. You can figure them out, or you can pull up. There's calculators that'll help you with all that stuff if you want. B as in boy. Yeah, 1011. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yep, that's exactly right. Yep. And again, you guys don't have to memorize those. I do tell engineers you should be able to do them kind of quick if you need, but there are other types of, calculators out here. You got calculators on all kinds of different systems. Google has calculators for you, right? You can just pull up Google and ask it questions, but at a high level, you should kind of understand at least what's going on between, am I looking at binary digits, hex, or decimal digits? Those are the three major ones you're going to see inside of your compute, right? A lot of times when you guys are dealing with memory registers and it's in hex, you're going to get a 0x before it, and that'll tell you that it's hex, right? That's a very kind of common one. Yeah, Gregory Alinovich. Yeah, you just keep telling the story. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, base 64 as well. Absolutely, yes. But I'm just kind of going off a little bit and telling you guys this. And the reason I tell you guys these things, and this kind of comes up in that other talk we're doing, and I'll pull it up real quick, even though we're not going to do the talk right now. I did it the other day, but we got this methodology that AI is coming, right? Everybody's going to deal with AI at some time. So you're going to pick one of these when we do it, and then you're going to go and you're going to have these little AI assignments where you're going to spend some time like looking through these things and asking an AI kind of like you would a junior engineer or like a study buddy. That's kind of like your study buddy activity. Anyway, so all that to say, I'm just giving you things to go think about more, right? This guy said dotted decimal notation. What the heck's the dotted decimal notation? Is he making that up? I could be making it up. You guys don't know. I might have something up my sleeves here. There may be all kinds of stuff going on. So, oh yeah. Paste this in a decoder and get, yeah, absolutely. Yep. Base 64 is very common for Kubernetes work as well, because your secrets are typically stored right in base 64. So it's not a real secret because you've only encoded it. You haven't actually encrypted it in any way, but you do have to have permissions to call it. So, or to get at the secret. So that's kind of okay. All right. So anyways, how many A records do you see? We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool. I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If they ask me for my quad A records, which are 4 A's, that's kind of cool. And what server was used for this? Well, that's these are my questions up here. Now I want to dig. So dig is going to give me some more information. And dig by default, this is fun, only told me the A records. Didn't give me the quad A records like hosts did. So do you really need to know all the trivia around all the nuance of what a command is going to give you? No, because you're probably just going to say host dig nslookup all 3 in a row. But it's kind of interesting that by default, this didn't give me the IPv6. Maybe it didn't think that I had a network that had IPv6 running, and maybe it just defaults to that. I know we can change that behavior, right? Like we can go look up dig, and we can ask dig to behave a different way, right? dig-h, and it'll tell us, I should be able to in here figure out, right? That's kind of hard to see, but I could figure out in the help what's going on. I can use IPv6 to query, right? Or I can specify the query type, probably something like, if I wanted to know, like IPv6. Now I can also dig more into it. So man, what's that command? Dig, right? And then say type, right? Maybe I want to go look at the type. And then I want to dig in a little bit on what that -t means, because that gave me a little bit, but it didn't really tell me what that was. So the type can be quad A, and that might be kind of useful. So I might be able to do that dig command again and give the -t a like that, and then maybe that will give me the A records as well. So or the A records instead of just the other. And maybe I can figure out, do I really care? Can I do an A and can I do like an A and an AAA, or is it just going to give me the one? Looks like it just didn't care and just gave me the one. Maybe I can do something like that. I don't know. I've never tried it. Nope. So we can do A records by default. It's probably just ignoring what I sent. And then we can also do quad A records. So, okay, cool. Right? Like I didn't even know that because I've never had a use case for that. But the point is we can figure out. Oh my gosh. Yeah, thanks for coming by, Sending. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just showing you guys, like, you can play with these tools and you can kind of figure out. But in the lab, it asks you to do some things. And then it says, go look out where your system's going to query by default. That's your etcresolve.conf file. This is super important to know from a system standpoint. Like, hey, where am I querying from DNS, and am I getting DNS responses or not? And how would I know that, right? So your dig's going to tell you that. Your NS lookup that we're about to use is going to tell you that. So is your host command. Like, can I find these things in some way? So maybe I look for name server, whoops, and I throw those into a file so it lets me go forward. And then I can even use things like traceroute to how am I getting my traffic over there. And sometimes you'll see where nothing responded, right? So it's using ICMP messages, which is your Internet Control Message Protocol, to send next hop. It finds what the next hop is supposed to be, and then it sends an ICMP message to that, and it gives us some path data to tell us how long it's taking to get to each of those, which is just kind of novelty fun things as long as everything's working. However, if you did have some piping or pathing that was taking a lot of time, you could go and troubleshoot, in your own internal networks and that kind of stuff. Yeah, you'll find that a lot of network devices out in the world don't respond, right? They're actually configured not to respond. So if I go to like Yahoo, yeah, Yahoo's still up in case you guys didn't know. Yeah, it looks like there's some things that aren't going to respond to the ping for me, right? And it says, what output do I see? Are all the addresses shown? No, there's some things that aren't responding. There's probably a good security reason for that, or just in general. And you can go to all kinds of stuff. Let's go to, let's not do DAD. Let's do data.gov. Will data.gov tell me everything that's going on there? Or will mapping over there still have, there's some places that won't respond. But then is it going to give me all kinds of information about exactly where something was going, right? This thing's called port channel something, right? Like it's telling me about what, oh, look at that. Yeah, there's things that it's not telling me in there as well, right? But there are a lot of things before it went into not responding to me mode. You also might not be able to ping that either, right? Like data.gov might not respond to ping. Very possible, right? Nope, that responded. Right, but some of the pathing is definitely missing for us. Like it's not going to respond to ICMP, which makes sense, right? Because I've shown this to students before, and I'll show it to you guys. But if you just go to Wikipedia, right, and then say ICMP messages, right, or just say ICMP, it'll drop you in to the Internet Control Message Protocol, which we typically use with ping, which is Packet Internet Working Groper. And you come drop down here, and you might say, why don't I want to have my devices responding to that, to just every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the internet? Well, right here, look at all these things that your device might tell, or might. I mean, if just think about it, if I were trying to like figure out if I wanted to figure out like the internal workings of a building or something, like and I was trying to like hit it with some echolocation, and everybody in there always responded to me where they were, I would probably very quickly be able to figure out what was happening, that kind of stuff. Hey, AO, how's it going? I don't know what that means, but hopefully this stuff's useful to you. Yeah, destination unreachable, but look at all that information that might be going out. Like, why would I tell you anything about that stuff? Like, no, that's cool. I'll just take the message where it's going to go. I'm not going to respond on all these paths. So there's a whole bunch of them. But, like, why would I tell any of these things back to something, right? If I wanted, if security was part of it, right? Like, why would I want to feed all of this information back? And the answer is typically you wouldn't. So that's something to think about. All right. But if anybody's trying to figure out what we're doing labs, right? I'm just hanging out. Here's the lab. I'm not going to pin it, but there it is. If anybody wants to do it with us. Now you've looked around a little bit at the tools. Let's figure out the order your system looks up resources in. So we've got a file here. We can cat etsy.nsswitch.conf. We could also wait till the lab tells us to do that. Right? The lab's going to tell you right here how to do that. If you ever get stuck in one of my labs, you just go walk through it and just do the commands and see what the output is. Reason I did that, I often tell you guys the concept of, weightlifting. You've got a couple of buddies who are out weightlifting and they're getting bigger and the girls are starting to notice them. Most of you that have ever weightlifted know that the guys notice you well before the girls do, but I digress. If you ask to go hang out with them and work out with them, they're not going to sit you down in the locker room for 6 hours and tell you about what, how weightlifting works. They're going to tell you to just follow them around the gym and you're going to lift with them and you're not going to know what's going on at first. Well, that's kind of how I've tried to set these labs up. I want you to go do the stuff and get your hands on it, right? And then you can kind of go back and you'll get a lot of this stuff And this stuff will start keeping getting better. Page Short, how's it going? Q, yeah, the guys noticed my Linux skills. Yeah, I agree. Um, I actually, some of you guys know this. Actually, kind of funny. Not last Friday, but the Friday before, so about a week and a half ago, I had to go take a Linux Essentials exam. Now, why did I have to take a Linux Essentials exam when I've been working in the field of Linux for 25 years almost? Well, because I teach at a college, and that college has a course that they wanted us to run, but it had a requirement of either Linux Plus or Linux Essentials, and Linux Essentials doesn't ever expire. So I was like, screw it, I'll just do that. Now, should it have ever come up again where, I mean, in a few months when I'm done with my systems engineering PhD, I should just be able to be like, here you go. Like, that's my backstage pass to this. But because I didn't have that yet, and all the experience doesn't really matter, because in college they like just checking boxes. I just went and took the damn test. Yeah, Anatoly. Is Anatoly the same guy who was just they did a boxing match with Larry Wheels, or was that somebody else? Because people were saying that's Anatoly, and I'm like, that doesn't look like the guy that I've seen picking stuff up. And then if you guys did watch any of that, I watched just the outtakes. Larry Wheels, his biceps separated from the top, and I'm just like, oh, that is a gnarly, because I've seen biceps separate at the bottom, right? Like here, I can't get my arm up there, but like up here, I've seen biceps separate and roll that way. I've never seen them separate and roll that way, which is what happened with his. And I'm just like, oh, that's dark. Yeah, I know who that guy is, that Anatoly, but I was wondering if he's the same guy that did the boxing match, because I didn't think that was a thing. Yeah, it would be fun. Well, King Bun's that. I mean, but you've probably been around these academic circles where it's like, the best way I can describe it to people, and I'm not trying to shit on the academic system. I'm part of it. I really believe, like, if you go look, actually, let me take it back. I don't believe anything. The numbers state, the data are showing that the best way for the average person, right? The best, if you take all the numbers and you shake everybody out, getting a degree of some type is the best way to move up economically, at least in the US. That has been like a proven statistic over and over again. Now, that being said, right, and then back up and say, I definitely believe in the college system. What I'm going to say is also 100% true. It is the most accurate way I can describe it is it's a lot like that episode of South Park where they're farting in the glasses and just sniffing it, right? They're just like sniffing up their farts the whole time. And you're just like, oh my God, do people really do? Yeah. Colleges really are like that. Like, do you always see everybody's credentials after their name on every tagline of every signature? Yes. Am I going to do it? Absolutely. Yeah, in the college sense, absolutely. But outside of that, in us engineering circles, we just care if you guys can do the work. I care that you can go set these systems up that I need switched over to our internal DNS or whatever. I don't really care. One of our guys who just had to leave sending, he works with people. He's always interviewing with a big company, big tech company. PhDs all over the place. PhDs always coming in, and he'll get them in on a Linux terminal and make them do some basic stuff. And he's like, they can't even maneuver around, and I feel really bad for him. But like, the job is all Linux, and we have to tell them no. You've considered putting CISSP. That's actually funny, Q. If you guys don't know my story on how I got my CISSP, I did it just so that I could put my email signature back to my security teams. So I had my regular email, I had my response email to any other person, and then I had my security response email. And that's the only place that my CISSP has ever shown up as far as like in an email signature or anything. And it was only because I would argue so much with my security engineering team, specifically governance, risk, and compliance teams. Those guys, I used to argue with them. Yeah, that bite, but it was Vitali. Okay, cool. I had heard the name Vitali or Vitali. I don't know how to say it. I heard that he was fighting Larry, but I didn't know if it was the same one or a different guy. But yeah, that bicep tear was gnarly because guys, they came from here and went down. I've always seen them from down here and they roll up. So that was dark. All right, anyway, so we're here. I can see my hosts here because host lookup is what's actually happening in your system. We have files first and then we have DNS. That's the default way of doing it. And if I wanted to test that that's the way that works, right? If somebody said, Scott, you were just talking about the Socratic method, and you were just saying that maybe I need to test an assumption or validate or prove that something's true. We can prove that a thing that I just said was true, even if we didn't know all the back-end behaviors of Linux. We could test this, right? Let's figure out how we would test this. Well, let's find where Google is. So we'll go to google.com and we'll see that there's a bunch of Google information, right? There's Google all over this page. It's in red. I'm colorblind and I can see that red, so I know the rest of you guys can. Cool. Then I go over here and I'll get the latest host value for Yahoo, right? So here's a host value for Yahoo maybe, right? And now I'm going to add that. Now I have these other ones, but I think this other one's probably still fine. But I can also VI Etsy hosts if I wanted to, and Shift G O, and I'm just gonna add this line. So I'm gonna add that and www.google.com to my host file. Now some of you are looking at that going, wait a minute, Scott, you just grabbed your yahoo.com address and you put it in that host file, right, in the host file for some reason, and you put the IP address of the wrong one. And I say, yes, I did, because I want to see something. I want to curl Google again, and I don't, and I looked at that page again. Now I went to google.com and I looked for Yahoo and Google. Now it's a Yahoo page. So wait a minute. So, whoops, that is not what I wanted to do. If I go back real quick, right, and I look at my Etsy nswitch.conf, my files, so my Etsy host file is going to be looked at before DNS. And we added an entry for www.google.com to go to that Yahoo address, and we just proved to ourselves that we went to a different page. If I knew nothing else here, that's definitely a different page than the exact same query a second ago that was to this page. If I knew nothing else, I know that I just went to two different web pages. Well, now what if I said, okay, I know that behavior just changed. Could I change it back by modifying this file? Yes. So we're going to go VI that file again. And we're going to change it, right? We're going to change this file to have the DNS first before the files. So DNS is queried before I look at my local files, meaning we're going to go out to Google, VI Etsy nswitch.conf, right? Let's go look here. And there's a couple ways you can do this, but I'm going to do it like this, right? And I'm going to modify this line so I don't affect the original line, right? We're going to keep the original line in place. And I'm going to do something like this, files. And all I did was just switch the order of them, right? There's no service to restart. There's nothing like that. But what should happen here, we can kind of sit around and hypothesize a little bit before we actually hit the button. There's an old engineering saying that I love, one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions. But right here, this should now go back to the Google page because the network is going to be, the host files is going to be DNS for the host lookup first, and then the host file. So it should go to Google again, right? That's all we did was just change that little entry there. And then, so we curl it, and now we see that it's Google. So if this works, we can change it back. Right, and all I got to do for that is just delete this line and X that line. And now we should be able to curl, and it's back on that Yahoo. Then to really fix system, we'll go get rid of that BS line that we had added, right? And then now when we curl the system, it looks good again. So this is just something that we can kind of play around with. Oh, I'm missing stuff over here. Sorry. I did see a guy with a 50 cal blow up in his face the other day, but I don't know how long ago that was. Some programs might, right? Like some systems. So, and this is also an interesting thing. This is why I tell people you got to go play around with Linux. Some things have to be restarted, right? Within Linux systems. Some things don't. So some things are going to query the state of the system. Some processes and things like that are going to, they're going to take whatever value in the system when they first read it, and then that's going to become, like in this case, that's going to be their DNS query or whatever. Things that go out and reach to the Etsy nswitch.conf file every time, like curl, is always going to be reset. I mean, because it's not a persistent program, so it's just on every call, it's a brand new call against it. But that is a good point that, like, this is something that if you're changing it on the fly in a system, you may have problems. I'm a big fan most everything that I've ever built, I'm going to be testing down in a dev environment well before I get to prod. So I'm going to know the behaviors of things, and I'm going to do the one test for me that rides over the top of every other test, guys, is does the system come back up to a clean state on restart? If there's anything that I have to change, if there's anything in there in between that, then we got a problem and we got to rebuild it. And I know that sounds kind of like almost like, oh my God, Scott's a monster. He makes his guys build things 1,000 times until they work. Yep, I do. Because we're not stamping something with our name on it that just comes out like a pile of, like a pile of turds. Like we can't do that, right? That's not good engineering. That's not gonna. The other teams aren't gonna trust you very often or very much, anyways. So, all right. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I think did this fail? I think it failed because I took all those values out. I think my check actually checks for it, but I'm gonna skip it because my check is that's fine. I knew that it was coming out, or I knew why I was skipping it, right? And it says, look at you learning Linux. You looked at your DNS tools to find resources, and then changed the system so that it looks in different areas first. Other things that might be kind of interesting. I mean, we have other networking things that we've done, but I might want to know like the IP addresses and information. I might want to know if I'm using a fully IPv4 or IPv6 stack. I know that here. I do have IPv6 enabled in my system, right? But do I have any routing enabled for IPv6? I don't have any routing in my kernel for IPv6 right here, right? There's nothing specific to that in here showing up. I can also do route and see if there's anything in there. I can see, sometimes when we want to dig into how protocols are configured within the kernel, we have sysctl-a, and maybe by the way, that's going to dump 1,194 kernel parameters to the screen. I don't want all those. But what I might want, right, we might filter out for just something like IPv4. Here's my IPv4 ones. That's 383. That's a lot. But how many of my IPv6 ones are there? Oh, that seems like a lot. So there's a lot of each of them, right? But maybe I type that through more so I can actually see them. And here's some of the things that are there in IPv6 that we can configure. And there's all kinds of tuning parameters that we sometimes do inside of systems. Typically, we want to know why we're tuning it out, because a lot of the defaults are pretty good. But we can tune out the way that our system behaves. In fact, I sometimes show you guys this, but in the STIG standards, there's a bunch of sysctl configurations that we set, which I think I might even have. Do I have that somewhere? I might have. Let me see if I have it in here. Because I used to post them, I think. I used to post them every now and then. Or I did post them at one time. Yeah, maybe not. There are different ways that we fix them as well. Anyways, we don't care that much about that, but there's just a lot of stuff there. All right, so if I backed out of here, let's go back out here. Let's refresh this page because I think this should be in dark mode now. Because we started our dark mode earlier. So that was us looking at DNS finding resources. We've got some stuff on bash scripting. I think most of you guys can probably play with the bash scripting stuff when you want to. Let's talk about software and package managers. This is a good one. Kind of just burn some time on. Oh, nice. Yeah, and you know what? It's actually funny. We were talking about this the other day. In all my years of doing Linux, like Linux desktop, probably the least. I've never I've never maintained Linux desktop professionally for a company, right? I've done my own Linux desktop when I was at Best Western as an architect. I spent a little bit of time there before COVID hit. Some of you guys know that story, right? I made a jump from a very cushy, I was the platform engineering lead for AAA, and I just kind of on a whim, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go do this architect stuff. I'm contractor for 6 months, and then if they like me, I stay on. They liked me, they were gonna hire me, and then COVID hit. So if you guys don't know, the travel industry was hit really hard by COVID, so they let all their contractors go, and I was one of them. So as kind of happens, right? I mean, this was right at the beginning of COVID, right? Which is one of the reasons I tell people when they're always telling me about how hard it is to break into tech. I get it, right? I've had to reshuffle around and get a new job. You know, I've been there. So at least as recently as 6 years ago. But anyway, so you're a new system administrator at a company. You need to better understand the software that's installed on the system. You also need to better understand how to install software and where that software is coming from. There's all kinds of other reasons you need to know these commands. One of the main ones is your security team's always going to be breathing down your neck for vulnerability scanning. They're going to be scanning typically with third-party tools that you don't have access to, but those third-party tools are going to have access into your systems. Sometimes even like high-level sudo, or even sometimes they're given root. I've seen that before. I fight it as much as I can, but like when a director or higher comes down and says, "Hey, we're going to have this," then you know it is what it is. You can only say the policy states this so many times, but anyways, these are the people that are going to be coming to you about where your software is and what versions you have, and are they same across all your systems, and all of these different types of things that we end up maintaining in like an operational system, right? So how do we list all the packages on this system? Well, there's dpackage-l, and then this is kind of interactive, right? Like I can go page by page, I can go line by line, I can hit Q to get out of it. If I wanted to know how many packages roughly, we have about 817 or so packages, right? And you say, Scott, how do you know that? Well, I happen to just know that the top 5 lines are just bullshit, right? Because we just saw them. But also, the cloud and Ubuntu. You know what's actually funny? What did actually happen right after COVID, and I only know this because I went right back into government world for HPC, is Ubuntu, Canonical, finally got their crap together enough to get approved by the US government, and now you can have, in some government projects, you can have Ubuntu systems. When I was doing it at first, it was all RHEL. We had all RHEL everywhere. Now it's a lot of RHEL and Rocky, and then also Ubuntu's allowed, and SLES. We have a fair amount of SLES hanging around too, which is the SUSE Linux Enterprise, right? Oh, you know what? I don't know if you guys can even see it down there. But you guys can always clip things. And I think if you clip things, it automatically comes back. I want to see if it's still doing it. It should clip whatever. So if I say anything that's kind of interesting to you guys, or you see something pop up that's interesting, you can always clip it. All right. Anyways, where are we at? So I use dpackage-l. How many packages do I have? We might use something like word count-l. Yeah, cool. Look, there's our clip of whatever I was talking about, right? So anyways, I've thought about this a little bit, and I had mentioned it a while back in the Discord, but you know, if you guys get, you know, interesting things and you guys clip it, I'll have some kind of bounty. I don't know. We're near the end of this month, so maybe we'll do it. We'll start it in September, but something like, because our clips reset, but I'll do something where like, whatever the most interesting clip or something is, if I use it, I don't know, I'll give a humble bundle or something to the person who does it. So that's some incentive to start making clips as you go, or as you find things interesting to you. All right, so let's say that the question comes from the security team about SSL. They say, hey, we saw this, you know, vulnerability come across our table, and then we were scanning your systems, and we need to know, do your systems run SSL in any way? And you're like, oh God. By the way, this is going to happen a lot in the systems world, where the security people who are doing governance, risk, and compliance don't understand in any way the systems that they're governance, risk, and compliancing over. Now, the reason I went like this is because literally everybody that does Linux here knows that the way that we interact with Linux systems, in fact, literally the way I'm connected in right here, is over SSH. SSH is all within your SSL libraries, right? You got the OpenSSL client and server, right? In fact, we can look right here. Here's OpenSSL. I should have a client and a server in here. In fact, this one may be all in just OpenSSL. But on the Red Hat side of things, if I pull up Red Hat, or Rocky, right? A little bit different command, RPM QA, grep for SSL. We would see, yeah, well, there's our SSH clients anyways. So, yeah, so OpenSSL does have to be there, right? Like that's going to be there. So they ask you, you know, was SSL there? And you're using SSH to connect in. Of course it's going to be there, right? So then they're asking like what version do you have? Well, sometimes we need to know the version of things that are going on in our system, right? So here's the version of OpenSSL that we have on here. We can query information about it. But how many packages do we have? We might have, yeah, That's less interesting information, but it might be good to know. Maybe you run this as a check across all your systems to make sure that all your systems have the same number of packages. So if I knew, this is just an Ubuntu box, so I don't have 2 here. But if I was back here, let's say I needed to run this check against all my systems, right? I might do something like Ansible, go to all my Rocky servers, which are predefined in an inventory somewhere, and then mshell -a, -a, and then our arguments are going to be like an RPM QA, and let's just say grep for SSL, word count -l. Is it all the same? Should be all the same, but is it, right? Maybe you just run that real quick against all your boxes just to make sure. Maybe you actually have a playbook running, and that playbook is checking everything and looking for drift, right? We do this in some of our configuration drift labs, where we look at like the way that we validate that all of our systems are the exact same way that we created them, right? Because things can change all over the place. This count previously installed packages that didn't have their configs. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there are things that can be messy with systems. In fact, this is one of the things that, you know, this depends too, because there's 2 major ways that we build systems in the systems world. We have stateful systems where we build physical boxes or virtual machines, and they're based off of like a golden image. And then when I say stateful, I mean when I turn the thing off and turn it back on, it comes back up with all the changes on it, right? And then that server is like an aging server that's always being patched and updated. And if he happens to be off when patching happens, he's now separate from the baseline of all the other systems. Alternative to that, an alternative way to run things, and this is how we do in a lot of our supercomputers, all the ones I run, are I was saying stateful earlier, now it's stateless. Stateless nodes, when they go down, they come back up with an image. So the image is, and that's how all of our Rocky servers are, that's how all of our servers in our Werewolf clusters are, right? Right, something like this, we can see all the images, and we actually updated images a little while back, and that was kind of a little exercise we did. And guys, you're going to find out, if you don't know already, that I'm terrible at naming things. But like the Rocky 9 image became Rocky 9 and then tagged with a date. A lot of times we'll just do like, this would have been like 19, and then what's July? Is that July 6th? Yeah, it's the or 7. July is the 7th month. So it might have been like 0619 or something like that, right? So then we knew, but I just added a whole thing to it, so now it's a big long image name. But the point is that those images go down and come back up clean every time. Those servers don't retain anything you do to them, right? Anyways, I'm going far afield to say all that stuff, but we may go look at, maybe we want to know where a certain command came from, right? So we got like a command like iostat. Iostat is on this box, yes, right? And we can do commands around it. But I wanted to know where that package came from. If I do a dpackage-s over here, it'll tell me that iostat, well, apparently that's their package iostat. Is that different? Yeah. It comes from the systat package. There it is right there. Yep. So systat is the name of that package, right? Right, looks like that. There's also, right, what package was installed, we can go look at everything else about systat, all the other, files, and these are all the files and everything that's been installed with it. So if I needed to know where some of these different things came from, I could find them here, right, dpackage-capl, right? I can also look for, does systat provide PIDstat? Yes, it does. There's some information about it. It also gives us the man pages for it. I can read some manual pages about dpackage as well, so I can go see what the most of the time if I'm in a man page like this, I'm looking very specifically for if there's any options or optional flags. And like if I needed to know about the remove package and some of the configuration settings about it, or different information, like we were talking about with the purge, if you just remove a package but you don't purge it, you typically don't get rid of the man pages and some of these other things. But I can go read about that behavior here, how it's gonna interact with the system. So something to think about, right? And then also you can look, was it installed recently, right? Dpackage log. This doesn't look like this has been installed since this log was last purged. But if I were to install a new version of it, I would expect it to be down in there, right? So now I can go forward and I say I can use apt to install packages that we need, right? The thing about apt, and I think I show it right here. Do I actually show it here? Might be in the next part. Apt is going to use your pre-configured anything that came with your distro repositories that are out there. So repositories are maintained by the different companies out there. In this case, it's going to be Ubuntu, so it's canonical, right? And they're going to have all of these repositories that are out there. And we can find the repositories on this system. Should be down in etc apt something. I think that's right. I think I have it in the next part of the apt. And then, yeah, sources.list. So the sources.list or sources.list.d will have, whoops, CD in there. Oh, it's not a file. Oh. Let's just go look here. Right? And then here you can actually see the different sources. I thought I had a, oh, did I not? Oh, well. Yeah. Did I not? Oh, I'm crazy. I don't know what I was doing wrong there, but here we can see which ones are there, typically defined by like some basic components that you need on them, right? There's also, yeah, app.d, yep. There's also inside of here, it tends to be, go to Rocky 5. Etsy yum.repos. These are the ones that I configure much more often. And then like if I had like my Rocky.repo, and then here's my mirrors and where my system's configured and all that kind of stuff, right? So all that to say, what if I wanted to install Ansible, right? I want to have the Ansible tool on here. I like to throw time on it so I can see how long something took. Because if something takes longer than about 12 seconds, you probably should put the time in if you ever have like steps for your junior engineers or somebody else that's going to run through something, because people will control C so fast in the systems world. You do want to make sure that they don't stop something that probably should finish eventually. Yeah, I use RHEL almost exclusively. Well, RHEL and Rocky most of the time professionally. In fact, the only reason we use Killer Coda Labs is because they're such a cool free resource. I would prefer, if they had a Rocky or a RHEL version, I would absolutely use that in all my labs. But yeah, we do have to use Ubuntu because it's free. So at least for that, because it took 50 real seconds. But processing seconds, user space, that's the user space calls, and here's my system space calls during that. So we can see kind of what happened. I can go look and I can see what was just installed around Ansible. I told it only to give me Ansible, but it gave me all these other dependencies, right? All these other things that needed to be there to get it in there. And then I say, okay, do you see all the packages that were there? Did I expect them all? Well, maybe I didn't know I was going to get all those, but I did, because we needed that to get that all working. Now I can go clear out the caches, and I can just clear out everything that's in there. So var cache apt archives, and then we see that it's empty. And then if we do an apt update only goes and pulls metadata. It doesn't actually update anything in the system. This is actually a trick question that people like to ask. Now that we've re-pulled all the metadata, we have a bunch of system packages that probably are upgradable. So we can list what packages, so we see 29 packages can be upgraded. We can run this list upgradable and see which ones need to actually be upgraded right now. Here's what the system wants to update right here. Oops. Yeah, here's all the things that we need. And this is super useful because let's say I had like 5 systems, and we don't look at it like this, right? We go well, we do kind of look at it like this, but a lot of times we'll do it something like this. And it's like, okay, yeah, okay, I get that it's not stable, but give me that output of 30. The reason this is useful is, let's say I have like 50 systems I'm going to be patching this weekend. One thing I should probably get into the habit of doing, and trust me, I know this from patching systems for a long time now. If I got to patch servers, I should run some pre-checks. The one pre-check I always run, and I use Ansible for all of it. The one pre-check I always run is of those 50 servers that like came out of my configuration management database and some other team assured me were there. I want to know which ones are up or down before I even start this thing. So Ansible, the very first thing it checks is the system up or down, and then if it can't get into it, it pulls it into it pulls it out of its running what's in the called Ansible hosts, right? And some of you guys have been around where we go and use Ansible to deploy a report after we're done with something to say what wasn't available. It looks like this. If anybody wants to see it, it looks just like this. Here's all our total systems. Any unreachable systems would pop up right here. Well, we also want those, if we're ever patching, and my more scale for me, thousands of servers, I want to know that those 38 in the corner over there were down before I ever touched them. So I always check stuff like that well before. The reason I want to do that is because you get all the way to the very end of the night and there's still a pile of 30 servers down. I want to be able to say, no, those things were already off. We can worry about that on Monday morning. Patching is done. Patching of the systems that were up is done. I'm not on the hook to fix servers late at night. My team's not on the hook because I'd always have my team with me. My team's not on the hook to fix servers all night that were already down. Because it's funny, you go look through the old change management records and you find out half of them were down in like one of your decommission steps, because typically we decommission servers over time so that if we ever do need to pull them back up and get info off them, we can. But it's terrible to turn servers back on. They're already outside of like your patching and baseline, so now they're introducing vulnerabilities, which is one of the things that's like the biggest cardinal sin is reintroducing vulnerabilities in the systems world. Once you've fixed a vulnerability, you should never walk back from that. And I tell you, if you do, your governance, risk, and compliance teams are going to yell at you. But that might not worry some people, but then it's eventually you keep getting yelled at like that, it's going to be your job, right? Because they're going to eventually yell in front of somebody that matters. But I can look real quick what's upgradable within there. Well, looks like there is some SSL updates, so we can get some nice security updates. Can you tell the security team that you will be updating these packages? So they ask about maybe some SSL and SSH. Well, I don't see any SSH packages coming in, so I can't tell my team that I have new SSH. Now, this is just an example scenario that I made up, but the point is, could you answer them the question, yes, we do have SSL updates, but we don't have any SSH updates. Have you found a vulnerability that's not patched yet? Maybe we need to wait. Maybe we need to, look at the vulnerability. CVSS scores will tell you how urgent it is. Something 7 and higher tends to be needing to be patched by the end of the month. Things that are like critical, like 10s, like the emergency ones, some of those we have to drop everything and patch today. That's what Log4j did. If any of you guys remember the Log4j debacle. Heartbleed did that as well. Heartbleed was that's a processor level issue, and then also so did Shellshock. Shellshock was a little earlier, but we had to do that as well the same way. So it says app-y upgrade, so it's going to go actually do the upgrade now. Hit OK, sure. And typically you don't have to do those. I think there may even be an unassisted flag because a lot of times we're going to be doing this command line, right? We're not actually going to be running these commands. And that's something I also try to tell you guys about the labs. The labs are so that you can touch these things and see the output. But then once we understand things, we tend to try to automate them as much as possible. Like I want to be able to be at the command line and I don't want to actually have to watch things. I just want to get my little reports at the end, right? As long as everything works. And then maybe I have to remove sysstat for some reason. Can I remove it? Sure. It gives me some information about what it's removing. And then if I go and I look, how much space did that save? It tells me how much disk space it freed up. That right now, that's like a rounding error for most of us nowadays. It's like 1.5 megs. Who cares, right? But it is sometimes useful to kind of know what's going on in your system. All right, so now we've used those two tools. Now we're going to go look at the repository. I knew there was a section on repositories in here. Let's go look in here, right, into cd apt. And then when we're in there, we're looking for, I'm actually removing all those ugly comments we saw earlier because I don't want to see them. And from anything etc apt sources.list.d Ubuntu sources, so in that directory, and here's like a nice little cleaned up, no comments, way that we configure our Ubuntu sources. So there's our Ubuntu. Here's the suites, or these are actually all the not the channels, but it's kind of like their versions, and then the components, and then if we've got a key that it's signed by, and then if any of these packages in there didn't have the same signature as this key that's been brought, right? This key was either downloaded separate or came with the operating system from the vendor, right? We're only gonna download things out of that archive. So even if they're ever compromised and things are being changed up there, as long as they're not signing it with the same key, as long as they've protected their key, anything in there that's malicious isn't going to be. This is what we call a out of band, right? An out of band key exchange. We were given this key a different way that never traverses over the network, right? It's out of band. Same thing with security stuff, right? And then these are our two configured repositories for this box. So do you recognize them from your updates and upgrades? Do you have another directory? So we can go look over here if there's anything in there. What are we on? Are we on 26 yet? Oh, we're still on 2404. So that's still the default location for a lot of this stuff. If I wanted to add like a tool from a different repository, we can throw that repository in right now. And that would look something like this. So we'll just echo in a key. So here's this key Grafana, which we don't have yet, by the way. This key says signed by, but we don't have that key yet. And then it throws in where we're going to go pull that down from, and then some of the different values, and we're going to throw that into this Etsy app sources.list.d grafana.list. So that's a new definition in there, right? By the way, I should be able to do this command again. Right there. Everything in there, I can do everything.sources. Because now I have that Grafana one, right? And now I should see, oh, did I put it? Let's see. Where did I put it? It's app sources.list.d. Huh. I might be dumb. Huh. Why did I see that? I gotta be losing my mind. Oh. Because I'm dumb. I should have named it sources. That's my bad. I could have just gotten around the problem like this, but okay. There's our Grafana stuff. Yeah, why did I call that .list and not source? I don't know. I don't know why I did that, guys. But anyways, the point is now I can go and look, and I can do a wget. I got to go grab that key, right? So this key is coming from a different way of grabbing it. So I'm going to go grab it off of appgrafana.com GPG key. Once that's there, does it not have an enter key to it? Strange that that's taken so long to download. That's just a simple file. Anyways, now if we do an apt update, now it's going to show us that it's pulling all that metadata out of that new source. And apparently it's really slow right now. Maybe somebody's attacking them. And then now if we were to search for Promtail or some tool that's in just that repository, we can see that it's in that repository. Wow, this is... Hopefully that's on their side, not our side. There we go. Now we see that the apt is there, or the apt Grafana is there. So now we go look at Promtail, and it'll tell us about the Promtail package. Man, maybe their network's going super slow. Something. Yeah, they're not normally that slow. That gives us time to hang out. But I'm trying to get on more, trying to get more online, hanging out with everybody, trying to focus on our workshops too down in the Discord. Yesterday hit 115, which was a record for yesterday. So what is it, August 25th? The record had been 113. So now we're at, I don't know what we hit today. Hold on, give me a second, I can tell you. So I'm up in Glendale, which is like a northern part of Phoenix. For some of you guys that aren't familiar with the Phoenix area, it says we're 114 right now. But my house is 73, so I keep my house pretty frosty. My house is pretty cool. I heard GitHub. So I don't do as much out to, professionally I don't do anything to an external repo. All my stuff is internal government stuff. But it is all Git, right? It's all Git at the end of the day. I don't get, thankfully, I don't get like when people are telling me that, oh, GitHub was down for X amount of hours or GitHub was having, I don't really see any of that because my stuff, like I just, I throw stuff up on GitHub from, my lab stuff and like messing around. So I don't do it like as much from like a professional standpoint. All my stuff is internal. All my repository stuff is government internal. So, yeah, 1.9 of reliability. They're trying to just get the 9. That's actually pretty funny. Oh yeah, you're migrating out there. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Microsoft in general can definitely frustrate you to no end. And then it's like, then you find that they're like so big. Like I remember Microsoft was talking. I was some conference and they were like, yeah, we've been the biggest contributor to Apache over all these years and this, and we've been the number one, and I'm like, oh man, because if you guys don't remember, in the 90s they got sued up and down for embedding Internet Explorer into all the systems. And then I think honestly, their web server was called ISS, I think back then, like late 90s, early 2000s. I think it was ISS. Is that right? It might have just been IS, but it might have been ISS. But anyways, yeah, IIS. That's what it was. Yeah, and I really think if they really were doing that as much, that they just didn't want to be in that same spot where like they were controlling 90% of the market. They're like, we'll just, here's this other competitor, and we'll keep giving them, because Apache was clearly a direct competitor with them, but they're like, oh yeah, we've been donating the most to them because since whatever. Yeah, a lot of people also don't know Microsoft built the SMB protocol, right? Server message block, and that's where we get Samba from, right? Yeah. King Buns, I'll tell you, man. Like somebody mentioned that the other day in Discord, and I'm telling you that Apache's still pretty big, for sure. In the Red Hat environments, there's still a lot of Apache running around. Nginx all over the place for Kubernetes, right? But Apache's still like, well, let me back up. It's HTTPD, right? They forked it, but it's, yeah. I was gonna say Apache's like their thing. It looks like we're not even reaching out right now. You guys see this? Like, this is actually fun to see because it's like we never see errors like this, but we're getting errors. We can't even resolve these things. So, look, we're not even able to do resolution right now. This is a new lab, so this isn't the lab I messed up, but we're getting out to there, right? And well, sorry, my browser's getting out to there. I don't know, their systems are not resolving to these right now, so there's something. Yeah, but this is a new lab. That's what I thought too. I was like, did I goof up my host file? But it's actually funny. They no, this is a brand new lab, so we're on a brand new system. Yeah, look, we're failing everything. But you know what's funny is you can almost always hit that Control-C real quick, and it might have just been, a bit was stuck in a wrong, you had a 0, 1. If you guys ever heard Bender's prayer, 1 0 1 0 1 1 0 1 0 2, that's the end of his prayer. That's like his amen. If you guys have never seen the old Futurama, it's a fantastic show. Yeah, Apache is definitely a big old flagship, right? It's like a big old like carrier class, whereas Nginx is the way that we can redirect things really quickly as a proxy. Nginx is really fantastic for like stuff we just want to pass through to like our app layer or something, right? But Nginx is a fantastic tool, especially for just how quickly I can get it up on like a Kubernetes box, right? If I just want to like quickly test that, like I can get something all the way to like a backend, which by the way, guys, that's not even work that I do. I just kind of know how to do it. That's something that King Buns works on all the time. Yeah, I could spin it up real quick with Nginx. With Apache, try to spend a little more time with stuff. I think we're busted right now. I think the lab's busted. I don't think it's necessarily the lab. I think the lab's fine. I think this environment might be down for the count. Now it says, look at you learning Linux. You use apt and dpackage to inspect the current software in your system. So if somebody were to ask you right now, if you'd never done any Linux before, but now you just did that lab and you're like, well, I'm kind of dangerous in Ubuntu now, you can go look at the if nothing else, you can go look at all the packages that are there. And I'm gonna kill this off because this is literally killing me to watch. I could do a history here real quick and say, okay, I know how to, remove a package if I needed to. I know how to add a package if I needed to, or apt-y install whatever package I want. We did a little bit of stuff where we added in a repository, so then hopefully we could use that repository. Real quick test. We're gonna remove that. But oh god damn. Oh, my hands aren't working. I'm very curious. Does this immediately work? Nope. Yeah, okay. So it wasn't our change that caused it, right? There is some bit stuck somewhere as well. Went to Red Hat Tech yesterday and learned about AutoD and FA policy. Oh yeah. FA policy, man, I'll tell you what. FA policy is a requirement in STIGs. Let me show you this. Where's my STIG viewer? So I have an older STIG version up, but I'm still going to pull it up for you guys. And then on like RHEL 9, right? I'll show you guys here real quick. Oh, come on. And then we'll filter our STIGs down by FA policy. And FA policy is a requirement, right? You have to have it installed, right, for STIGs. You have to have it enabled, right, for STIGs. And you have to have a policy configured to deny all and permit by exception the execution of authorized software programs. And then you have to have that set up. So on a lot of government systems, when we're doing our STIG policies, things that touch the government network always have to have these. There's 3 things that have to be on there, non-negotiable. They have to have their firewall on. They have to have SE Linux on. SE Linux has to be there and running enabled. And then they have to have this FA policy on. I'm trying to think if there's a 4th one. Those are the 3 things that I always have to have on. All the systems, so then in an air-gapped environment, all my systems behind, I can get an exception and turn this off. When we're running GPUs and we've got all kinds of NVIDIA software and different things that have to be loaded as drivers and stuff, FA policy will kind of enrage you in the same way that SE Linux used to enrage most of us, right? And we just turn it off back in the day. Nowadays, those are non-negotiables. They have to be on. You have to get the things working in those environments. Thankfully, back in our like CPU and GPU clusters, back in the HPC side of things, we only have to have the front end nodes. What looks like this, well, for people that care, it looks like. Where is that page at? It's funny. I don't know where my. Was it this one? Yeah. It's this one. But where's my page? Here. It looks like this. So basically, anything over here, anything out in these nodes. Out here in the access zone, it's unequivocal. They have to have those 3 things. They have to be there. But over here, these things in the back end, our storage and our cluster that's actually doing the work, those things don't. And these in our management zone over here don't have to have it either. Typically, these are the access zone where the network directly connects before we get into what we consider an air gap. And I was discussing this the other day because somebody was asking me about, is it actually considered an air gap if there's any touching? You can still air gap systems, but hold on. The air gap is the fact that there's no TCP/IP or InfiniBand traffic traversing from the internal network to this network. There's a distinction here. Login nodes, you have to come in through SSH and then you jump over to the other network. So you're coming in through a bastioned environment. Sometimes we even bastion before the logins. Like in my systems, the bastions are over here. Data transfer nodes, same way. To data transfer between these nodes, you actually come off of this network into whatever your data transfer tool is, and then the data are moved out through that data transfer tool. And then web portal nodes are the same way, right? If we have some kind of front end here, like a tool like Open On Demand or something, that web portal device is going to be hardened as well in whatever way we have. So Open On Demand is a fantastic tool. You can share all these different things. When I build so after I get done with the PhD here pretty soon, Open On Demand is going to be in our environment, and some of you guys are going to be able to, well, people that want to, are going to be able to connect in. I'll probably put we'll probably do a certificate-based VPN there, so then you can get certificates. We'll put something inside of our, kind of like the rest of our labs, where you can go here, and then where do you go? You go here, and then you put in your system stuff where you want to connect. We'll probably do something like that, but maybe based on email or something, and we'll email you a certificate, and then you'll be able to access. And then once you get in, you'll be able to use Open On Demand. So if you guys want to do, I mean, you can use anything here. Probably the most common one people use is like Jupyter notebooks. But I do have to set them up. It's not that you just get all of them. You have to set them up. But I'll probably do Jupyter notebooks on here, and probably Octave. We won't do MATLAB because that costs money. But Octave is the open source version of it, or the other side of it. There we go. All right. So what else do we have here? Get that stuff over there. All right. Yeah, this thing's not resolving. That's not doing any of that stuff. Yeah. I'm not gonna probably get any research grants, guys. I'm not gonna get anything cool like that. I'll just get that other stuff going. All right. So Spectre, I think you got purged in an unfortunate boating accident. I'll go drop that for you. I think that was a part of a bigger scheme. Hold on. I'll do that here in a little bit. There's a long story there. But yeah, so our lab won't go and resolve those, and that's not all that big of a deal. But you come in here and you look at that. yeah. I'll explain that. I'll tell that one to you later. But that one was thing. Hold on. I got to go into server stuff. Give me a second here. There you go, Inspector. You're good. All right. Yeah, so anyways, that lab showed us about the package managers and that kind of stuff. And most of you guys know I'm just kind of going off the cuff right now, because I started today and I was like, I want to do all this stuff, and then I looked at everything. I was like, I don't want to do any more work. So that's why we're doing this stuff. So we did DNS, messed around with DNS. We messed around with our we were just doing the software and package managers. And we could dig into some of these other things. I think there's good labs there for you guys to play with if you want. We do need to go inspect some of these and make sure, because like the Slurm DBD on Linux, that's a newer one, and I know that one works. But some of these other ones, I need to check them every few months, because they point out to other locations, like they point actually to DoD stuff, and I don't know that always works. So some of these we need to go check, like the STIG tools, because once the STIG versions move forward, one of the things they do is nothing works. No, Inspector, I'll message you on there, but it was, if you go look, there was a certain amount of let's just say a component that was constantly just like telling people they couldn't get into tech, and I was just like, I can't have this anymore. So yeah, I kind of went scorched earth. But yeah, I think you were just caught in the middle of all that. Anyways, let's go look at one. This one's fun. LSOF. I haven't looked at this one in a while, but if you guys want to do this one will be good. Yeah. Oh, I don't mind if people talk religion. I can't have all the people telling people they can't get in tech. That's just not, that's too much, right? Eventually, after years of it, like people have to like say, hey, like maybe the industry's not the problem, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I can get back in if I really want to, but anyways, it doesn't matter. So let's set up an NFS share for our LSOF testing. We're going to deploy an NFS server. Actually, it's funny that this one has some troubleshooting, but it doesn't really tell you the background. I might need to redo this lab a little bit. But let's go over to node 01. We're going to install the NFS server, right? So this is a tool right here that we need to run NFS, right? We're going to share NFS to other servers in our environment on port 2049, right? It's a TCP port 2049 that'll be shared out. And once that's shared, once that's turned on, we then give resources that other devices can connect to. Now, NFS gets a lot of a bad rap in the industry because it is a vulnerable protocol, meaning, watch what's going to happen here in a second. We see that it's running. We see that it's exposed 2049 on IPv4. Any address can connect, and any IPv6 address can connect, right? So boom. Yeah. But it was part of a bigger thing, yeah. But nothing's exposed, right? We're not exposing anything. Now, right here, I come down. I'm going to make a share. I'm going to give it a permission group that's just nobody, no group, right? And nobody is a special character or a special name where the UID should always be defined in a system. Yeah, it's just this out of the way nobody, right? And it's a place that people will get dropped into if they don't have an account. Like, well, I guess processes do if they don't have an account. But it's sometimes useful for NFS sharing so that we can allow things to connect in. Yeah, NFS is absolutely, like, the most useful reason for NFS in the enterprise, really, well for me, because I've maintained big clusters, is it's a really awesome place to have a system go grab like a centralized config from. Now, a lot of people very quickly could go, hold on, Scott, let me raise my hand here. Couldn't I just get that from Git? Nowadays, yes. Oh, absolutely, right? Like, couldn't that just be, and wouldn't it be better, Scott, to just have that up in Git so I know that I'm pulling an exact version and I can even check against a checksum that it's exact? Yes. Nowadays, those things exist. However, NFS has been around. I work on clusters that have been around a long time where NFS is just still kind of the workhorse. So a lot of times we just pull like simple configs. I want to say like the paper configs, but I'm saying like the thing that I could read in like a couple of pages type configs. So if 10,000 nodes came up at the same time and blasted that server for 3 kilobits per, 3 kilobits each, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the system. There's no load on the system is my point. So let's go real quick. We're going to add this line here. We're going to shift G, O, and then we're going to add this line right here that says we're going to give that share to anybody that wants to connect to us. Just paste it like this, and that looks good. It's going to be read-write. The sync is going to be on. You can also say no sync. That just whether or not the client is actively searching things and that kind of stuff. And no subtree check. Those are just like the basic things that we might do. There are all kinds of tuning parameters you get into when you get into like big NFS stuff. We just want our server to share out this one little thing so we can test, right? That's all we're doing here. We're not doing anything crazy. Much like all systems, if we want to make a change to a config file, we got to restart the service. So we restart the service. And now when we do our show mount -E, we can see that we're sharing. We can also do export FS, but I don't really use export FS very often. But I mean, it shows us that it's shared to the world. It also kind of interpreted that for us a little bit. When I worked on a Slurm cluster in college, we put everyone's home dirts in an FS share so that the other nodes could access their program. Yeah, pay short. That's exactly how we do it in the high performance compute world, with the exception of this one thing. Let me show you this one. There's this one exception here. That's exactly how we do it with one exception. Hold on, let me see. Where's my page at? I literally just had it open. Right here. What you're saying is exactly right. If we're in a smaller, and colleges a lot of times do this, but if we're doing it in like big HPCs, I would say, when I say big, I mean, like, let's say we start getting where some of the big colleges I work with have 15,000 node clusters, and their backend storage is Global Parallel File System or Lustre. Those are the two big ones It's General Parallel File System. Sorry, it's the IBM tool. But anyways, a lot of times instead of having like a little, because we'll have a little NFS server over here in like the management zone doing that stuff. A lot of times with the home directories, we'll end up actually putting them out here in some kind of big clustered storage as well. But yeah, NFS home directories are big as well. That's a good reason to have it, because then all the nodes just see the right thing. That is how, by the way, that's how Werewolf works. So like in our Werewolf lab, right? Oops, oh, wrong one. Show mount -E and SSH to Rocky 5. And then we do something like df-h over here. We'll see those 4 NFS mounts, right? There's my NFS mounts back to my Werewolf server, which is on, where's it at here? Yeah, 25. There he is right there, .25. That's my Werewolf box, right? And that's all defined. It's actually interesting that shows up like that, because that is defined in the host file. So I would have thought, I mean, I guess it doesn't resolve in mount, but the name would have worked either way, right? We could have done that either way. Yeah, UID and GID numbers. I tell people all the time, man, that's a hassle if it's not being centrally managed somewhere. It actually happens in here. If you just make users in here on your boxes, like if I just ID Scott, I think, yeah, there's no user Scott. But if I go to home, ls-l on here, well, Scott is the 1000 user, but he doesn't exist on Rocky Home. He exists back on that other server. Now we have this mismatch, and then on maybe Rocky 4, let's say somebody adds another user, so the 1000 user ends up being like John or something. UID, GID nightmares and clusters can just be really, really bad. So a lot of times, yeah, we definitely have to, I almost want to say like zealously guard when we do like LDAP, and when we start to connect in from like our Active Directory inside of systems, because we're almost always pulling stuff from companies' Active Directories, right? Like AD has kind of won. If you guys don't know, Active Directory, Microsoft has won that space. They have owned that space for 30 years, and there is no, like, to a government or a corporate entity, Microsoft just runs your Active Directory. That's all there is to it. So I hate to say this in like the Boondocks. If you guys remember the show Boondocks, right? When Hugh, it's Riley actually. He's selling all the candy bars, and the guy says you can get down or you can get put down, right? It's kind of the same thing. Like you can either get on board with using the Windows Active Directory, or you can, whatever. Well, anyways, where we normally go with that, all that to say, we tend to just throw them way up in the top. So all of their user IDs are unique because they're coming in unique from Active Directory, but they're way out of the way. So they're not in any way close to our other users. However, I will tell you, in the corporate world, one thing that I will fight tooth and nail for is to not have local users accounts created on systems. There's two user accounts that I can think of that are always there, and they just make me shake my fist at the heavens. If you ever install Oracle, right? If you're an Oracle shop, which I've run a lot of Oracle shops, Grid and Oracle are two users that have to be there. They have to be there. It won't work otherwise. And you have to put your exec back on your temp. So this is a box. Oops. Don't I have temp on his own? Thought I had temp on his own directory. Do you guys see him? Nope, temp's not on his own, so I haven't partitioned him off. Temp, typically for like Stig configs, if I were to pull my Stigs back up, you have to have no exec on temp, but you need to put it back on so that you can run your Oracle scripts for installers. And I just shake your... do you have Ansible user locally on boxes? So in the corporate world, I use like service_Ansible typically, but some type of service account for Ansible. And you need that because you want to integrate Ansible automation platform, which we used to call Tower. But you need an account that has a user. And also the other part of it too is all of the systems that are not like my boxes that I own. So Scott's, let's just back up. Scott's boxes are all keys and root can jump everywhere. Because I'm an old admin, I'm always going to be that way. But in the corporate world, the standard is you can't have root jump into boxes. That's a corporate standard that should always be there. Yeah, AWX Tower, yeah. Have I used Kerberos? Yeah, Kerberos is pretty big, yeah. although we've moved, so we're still using Kerberos under the hood, but it's not like we used to use Windbind Samba in Kerberos. Now it's SSSD with Kerberos typically, and that works pretty good for the most part. SSSD is so nice. I mean, I started using that in back in CentOS and Rocky, and well before Rocky, but Rail 7. And then now, yeah, it's SSSD really is kind of like the standard. If you're building stuff net new, try to get your SSSD config set up, because those realm join commands and that kind of stuff, it's kind of nice. Yeah, rolling your own auth. Well, another thing too is so much that all that IDM stuff is all free. If you are, it's where I'm going with that. It's not free. If you're already paying Red Hat, IDM is all part of it. So you can do your own IDM servers and stuff like that, which is like their identity manager. So then that interfaces with Active Directory, and then you have a layer of control for all of your internal servers. Because, I say this from experience, one of the worst things that can happen is people start sending you tickets and telling all your junior guys, hey, Linux is all busted, can't get any of our Linux shit. Well, but it's down because your authentication back to Active Directory is down, but that's down because the Windows team has a change going on, and they knew about it and probably said it at change management meetings, and everybody glazed over because it was. I know glazed is a new term that everybody wants to use for something else, but we used to say your eyes glazed over when you're not paying attention to things, but nowadays people say glazing somebody is to like. We used to say that was sucking them off, but I mean, I guess that's not an appropriate term in the industry, anyways. But glazing somebody is like hyping them up, right? But yeah, and then it's all because of DNS. Fair. Always DNS. Well, I don't know where I was going with all that, except to tell you guys that like typically we drop tempfs in highly secured environments. /temp is off on its own. And if you ever say, Scott, where do you have a list of those? Where would I find all the partitioning that I actually need? Well, if I pulled my Stig viewer back up, and I took this off, right? Remove all my filters real quick. And I came here and I said to like no exec. No exec it has to be set on a bunch of these, and you can go find them. So home directory has to have no exec. Temp has to have no exec, right there, temp. Var log, which does have to be partitioned separately from other vars. And var log, because if var log ever fills, they don't want it to crash the rest of the box or that kind of stuff. So var log has to be on its own. Var temp has to have no exec. No exec on home again. So a few of them are redundant. But typically if you go and you find these all the way down, you'll see. And by the way, the reason they keep showing up over and over again is because I'm finding the no exec, but each one of these is about the different ones. So it's no suid, no dev, no exec, but we're finding the no exec even for the ones that are about the other thing. So if you're like, why did so many of them come up, right? We can do that. Yeah. We could also have an exclusive filter. So I could exclude, so watch this, no suid, and then I could say, there's that. Well, yeah, I guess I would lose all the other, so the search function's not great. Search function's not great in there. But anyways, yeah, it's always DNS. That's a haiku there that we always like. What else did we have here? We still use the term. That's funny. Where else was I at? Hold on here. I literally don't even know what I was talking about. Were we on this still? Oh yeah. So we were exporting. We did our export FS, and we really only did that because we wanted to be able to do some LSOF troubleshooting on a system. So now we go back to our normal node, which is control plane, and we're going to install the client and connect it over. And then when we have that, don't think of it as a bridge, but when we have that mounted file system on our system, then we're going to be able to see with LSOF what it means to unmount things. Because oftentimes if you get a message of, hey, I'm having a problem, or this file system isn't available on here, or it's like stale file handles, this kind of stuff, then you go and you try to unmount something, right? U-mount as we use it. You might not be able to do that. You might not be able to do that. Processes are going to be in there, all this other stuff. So what's in there? What's touching it? So we installed that. Let's see if we can mount that share into mount. And then if we look, we see that it's there. If we look at the whole system, right? All of the file systems. That's why I did it like that, was because there's all these other ones. But if we did grep-v for like container, and then I don't know, let's do it like this. That get rid of, yeah, that gets rid of most of the BS off of our page, right? So now I look and I see that NFS mounts down there. I can also mount grep for NFS, and there's our NFS link. And by the way, you might say, well, Scott, hold on a second. On node 01, I saw you put that file in. I saw you only give 3 values. It was read-writable, which we see it's read-writable. You said that it was going to also be, what were the other things? I didn't have root squash or no root squash, but I don't see those other values. You set them, but they're not there. Well, because there's certain things that are, all these other values that show up are just kind of default values that the client and the server negotiate. If you don't give hard values, I always use this example because I think this is the easiest way to kind of think about it. If you go to your friend's house and they have a rule that when you come to their house, you take your shoes off, but you have a rule that you don't take your shoes off at anybody's house, who do you think probably wins that? And it's not just Fisherman because he's bigger than everybody, right? Like, he's like, I'm taller than you, therefore I own the place, therefore I can wear my shoes. No, typically in the server world, in the way that this works, the one that's in charge is the server, and the client negotiates as much as it can, but then it settles or accepts the lower value. But sometimes, and this is a huge thing when we're doing stigs. This is actually maybe one of the most annoying parts of stigging, is you will limit down like the ciphers that you're allowed to use and the MD5 and the different types of hashes that what they call the MAC hashes that you can use for like TLS and stuff like that. You'll limit those down, and now your systems can't communicate, or they can't. Well, they definitely can't communicate with those older protocols. And this is actually one of those kind of nightmare scenarios where you're like, oh God, I have this one legacy system that I can't get off this legacy system because nobody's ported the code over yet. And this happens a lot in the government. Oh shit, we need an exception, right? Now we have to put together a POAM, a plan of action and milestones, to keep the systems working. But almost always the thing that has to break is that security standard, because it's just simply not going to work. It's simply not going to work anymore. We have 2 options: apply the security standard and throw the productivity tool out. They're not going to go for that. Or bend the security standard so that it's like bending the fence so like the thing can keep going through. But it's just, yeah. Shitcoin miner pop up on a Jira server once. I neutered it by remounting temp no exec. Yeah, and that's actually, temp no exec is huge. In fact, no exec on almost all kinds of things. When I have a lab that we don't do very often anymore, but it's called the 3-tier app, and we build the 3-tier app to work. It's over in my Kubernetes labs. We build it to work, and everything talks all the way back to the little database. It can read from the database, it can look at the database, whatever. But then we take the middle area, the actual application, and we make it all not no exec. We make it immutable. So you can't even change anything on it anymore. So even if you do take over a process, even if you do something, you don't have the ability to change anything inside of the system, right? You can't go, get out of the system in any meaningful way. What do? We set no exec, and we also log the user as Ubuntu so that he can't do anything else. I got a lab on that, but I haven't touched that lab in years now. I think about it. I should probably go check that one of these days. Anyways, all right, so let's make sure that we can, so we've got this thing, right? We see the mounted file system there. Also, one other thing to show you guys, this is kind of fun. If you use the mount command, the cool thing about the mount command that I guess you don't really think about, like if you just do lab work, like home lab stuff and play around, you probably never thought about this. But this is very useful for me as an admin. We got our engineer roles, and then we got our admin roles where we just got to fix things. If I come to this server, mount is always read from /etc mtab, right? Mtab should be where it's reading from. And this file, very important to know, it's got all this raw information in it, very, very raw. We're doing what's commonly called raw dogging. No, we're not raw dogging the file. But anyways, it's in order of things being mounted. So if I ever just come to a system, right, and I type the mount command, and the last thing that's there, is some, yeah, it's not, it's not the right term. There's actually there's a show where I think they had, who was that? I think it was Harrison Ford, and he kept saying it, and the woman's like, "Oh my God, stop saying it." He's like, "I'll raw dog you," and she's like, "No, yeah, hide your chill, hide everybody." My point in showing this is this system here. If I had come to this system and I knew that everything was supposed to mount in a certain order, but then just like, let's say I had a bunch of NFS mounts in there and they all had come up, and then look, all this Kubernetes stuff came up, but one of my mounts was down here at the bottom, where what I'm telling you guys, this is I know it's not maybe the best way to think about it, but this is a lot like a log file in that it's chronological. The most recent thing that's mounted is there. So if I came to this, right, and somebody's like, I don't know, whoever's on vacation and they didn't solve this one trouble ticket, and Scott, I need you to take a look at it. And I came to this server and I saw this mount at the bottom, but then like I go check another server and it's up mounted where it should be, without knowing anything else about this. And I'm not saying I can derive any other real good troubleshooting from this. I know somebody's remounted this. I know that. I know it didn't come up clean, right? I don't even have to check uptime yet, although I've probably already checked uptime at that point, to know that this system has not come up clean. Somebody's changed a mount point since then, right? Now, can I surmise much else from that? No, not really. I can go back and look through history, but some of you guys know. Actually, let me tell you this. This is something that some of you guys might not know, but this is one that used to get us all the time. Qualys is a tool that typically in your environment will log in, and if management has deemed it, they will do it as root. And they will go, and Qualys just runs a bunch of commands right into the command history and will scroll off all other command histories that of anything that might be useful on a Linux server. And you might say, really? That sounds atrocious. Yeah. Trust me, like Qualys is its own beast. But I still think Qualys is a great tool. Don't get me wrong. I think they're fantastic. They're kind of a competitor with Nessus, if you guys know about like Tenable security and stuff. But anyways, where I'm going though, they will scroll your history log, so you can't find anything useful from any other engineers on your system, because they're running maybe even thousands of commands an hour against boxes. It's kind of crazy, but especially in some environments where they're really high security and low risk. Anyways, where I'm going with that, let's test the file. I did all that to say, can I write in there? Yes, I can write into that file system. Cool. So now we're going to use LSOF to look at the file system on our server, and then if something doesn't work, trouble the situation, see if you can follow it. So let's troubleshoot a little bit. Let's use LSOF to check the processes that are using that directory. So here's LSOF. Nothing's going on in /mount right now. Now I'm going to CD to mount. So, not temp, mount. And in our head, as we think about this, I'm standing in mount. Okay, I realize I'm not. But to the system, what does that mean for me to LSOF mount right now? Now, there's this bash process and whatever else is going on down in this system. Well, the process I'm running is right here, 5630. So I might find that I'm the one standing in mount. But I might also find other users in here, right? Especially if this is like a production system where we're actually doing things and actually, actual real processes are running out of here. Processes may be sitting in, reaching into, however you want to think about this and visualize it, into some remote, you mounted those network shares so that people could go access it. So absolutely, there we go. So, oh yeah, it says right here, check the process ID of your shell. Yeah, you're standing in the directory if you want to think of it like that. So let's U-mount it. Can we U-mount it? Well, we can't, because there's something going on in there. So it says, did it work? Why or why not? What is the system saying? Well, it says, well, you can't unmount something that's there. Where there's a process in it, it won't let us. So I say, well, what about this? Can I U-mount -L? Well, that worked. And if I did my df-h from earlier, I'm going to press up a million times to find it. I don't see it there anymore. But I'm still in that directory. So what happens if I do like an ls? That's weird. Sees it. What if I do a df-h? That's weird, because I'm not even in there. I can't really be in there. What error do I see? Well, it says no system process. Let's cd back in there again and do a df-h again, now I see that I'm mounted off of the root file system. Once you remove a mount point, you go back into whatever that default pathing was, whatever that default directory you were in. So, yeah, did the error go away? Yes, because now our process is properly standing where it should be, right? It's not going to a stale file handle anymore. So it says a little bit about that. And then I say, let's go capture the process ID of the SSHD, right? Or it's SSH daemon, but let's go run it real quick. Do we see it running? Yes, and it's running on process 1903. We see that it was started by systemd. That's how we know that it was started by systemd, is its process ID of 1. And then we go and send it into a variable. So if I say echo $SSHD PID, I would see 1903. That's what I expect. Okay, cool. So now I can do an LSOF-P against that ID if I have it. And the reason I did it like this, instead of just giving you a number, is I didn't know what that number was going to be, right? That number is going to change for everybody. So you could just do LSOF-P and then the ID number if you had it, right? And then look, here's all the process IDs. Here's all the files that it's opened and using. Here's any file handles down here. If it's listening to any ports, right? So it's listening to SSH, which is port 22. We could also validate that some other ways. We can do LSOF-I:22, and we would see that 1903 is what's listening to that, right? So these all, point at the same things and just give you more information kind of about what's going on. And then we could grep SSH from Etsy services, and we would see that that's port 22. So that's also what we expect that to be. And we could also validate it there. We can also look up the processes by name. So LSOF-C SSHD, and we would see the command over here. Yep. It's not the command. That's the, what do I have there? Yeah, it's just looking up by name. It's weird. I don't remember writing that, but apparently I did. So now we can go into control plane, and then we can see with W how we're connected in, right? It says, what is the TTI of the terminal? And in my case, I don't have one. And then we can go look if that terminal is open. Why don't I see that there? Oh, I don't see the terminal. I see that. Yeah, I don't know why. I see that like that. Anyways, then we can run a sleep command and background it just so it's got some process, and then we can go look for the user root to be using a command like sleep, and we should see what sleep is doing in the system. Where's sleep at? Here's all the things that sleep is accessing right now, even though it's sleeping for 600 seconds. I haven't looked at this one in a while, not since I wrote it. And then we could read a man about what AC does. Right. And A, I just hit N here. A option causes the list to be ANDed. Okay. And then what's the C do? Selects listing of multiple files or processes executing the command that begins with the characters of C. Yeah. Yeah, so we were looking for all of the sleep. And then that'll eventually go away because we won't have sleep after 10 minutes. What do we do, 10 minutes? Yeah. And then we could use Q to exit if we were down in the man pages. And then that's it. Yeah, so that one's pretty straightforward, I think. But it's like if you haven't looked at a lot of these commands and seen what's kind of going on, then this can kind of be... I feel like this one could be daunting if you haven't done some of this stuff. Let's bang DF. And oops, DH. My bad. Oh, it's because I'm in my other shell. Damn it. Oh my god. I'm retarded. I can be really dumb sometimes. Anyways, let's look at that. We don't have it mounted anymore, and then we could mount it back over. Oh, that thing in the corner of my screen, Trevor, is it's the old Ranger cam that we repurposed as Lily cam, and then I made it like a sand art camera for a while there, and then I wasn't using it because my wife's sand art was all busted. But now it's a little metal ball dragging itself around sand, and it's doing different art. That right there is a couple of, those are some flowers. It's not great resolution just because of how I have it set up right now, but it's just it's like a couple of flowers. It's because I haven't really zoomed in on a web page. But it's drawn some things, and then what it'll do is it'll wipe the screen and it'll start over. Move that up there so it can be out of the way again. Yeah, so those are some flowers being drawn in sand, and then you'll see it like it'll zero the whole thing out, and then it'll start over. Yeah. Move this back over here. Which you're learning LSOF, and you get to kind of say that, hey, I understand how LSOF can be used for some troubleshooting and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was showing you guys earlier, like for some of you guys that weren't around, I did a recording the other day on this as well. But then we're doing this as an event in like a week and a half or something, and it's like the goal is to get you guys through these areas of getting ready. Like if you want to get into tech, right? If that's the goal for some of you, that's kind of the goal. Then I have this big. It's about a 4-hour. We'll probably be doing it for about 5 hours on Saturday. So anybody that wants to come and like actually work on stuff, like not just come and soak stuff up. You can go and soak stuff up on the internet whenever you want. But if you want to come and actually work through some of this stuff and take some notes and make a plan, this is what we're going to be focused on in a couple of weeks. And then as I was doing this and I started building this out, and even when I was working on it today, I'm going to go back to like one of the most popular things that we've done, which is like the Socratic method. And I'm going to redo some of the Socratic method stuff with the focus of Linux, cybersecurity, networking, all these different areas that we kind of work in, all these different areas that we touch. And we look through all this stuff, we've done that a bunch, but like the learning Linux section, I was getting into, how do you learn command line? And what are you doing at the command line, right? And then how do you go learn on these things, and how do we get better at these things? And then how do you internalize the information, right? Because like just knowing stuff, I know, I tell you guys this all the time, I know all kinds of people smarter than me, right? I know all kinds of them, I met all kinds of them. But like the ability to apply it is a skill as well, So I might not be smarter than them, but I can guarantee you they all want me around because I can build stuff, right? Because I can kind of apply it down. And that's how I try to show you guys here with some of this. How do you internalize these things that you're learning? And this is kind of the Socratic method for this. This is a lot. We won't go over it right now, but we'll be doing it that day. This also wasn't in the talk the other day because I just put this together today. But it's like, how do we figure this stuff out? Setting up a new ZFS RAID with the data sets and poly. Nice. RAID Z2 with 4 disks. Okay. Yeah, Trevor, I'm eventually, there's 2 things I really want to get in our lab environment here soon. And we're going to have some more compute. We're pretty light on the compute right now, right? We have most of our compute right now is, it's all CPU based. We're going to get some GPU compute. And then one of the things I am going to do is probably work on getting us, the high-speed network part can come later. I'm not really worried about high-speed network, but I do want to get us some storage nodes so that one, we have a cluster dedicated to just big storage. And then we can work out the speed of the system later. Because I'll be honest, I don't think a lot of things are going to tax across the system until we start getting some people doing, like I'm going to set up part of this for us to have like access for like research and stuff. Because I know some people want to do research and they want to kind of play with this in like a lab setting. I mean, obviously we have the labs you guys can do for Linux like this, right? Boom, just get in there. These are your boxes to do whatever you guys want in, but then taking those and actually doing compute processing with them, doing research for people that are interested in that stuff. Yeah. All right. So hold on, let me pull up because we got some questions here. So where is my greetings. Yep, Trini power up. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you guys. Cankle Bunny said, off topic, seen a lot of SRE roles. Do we have an SRE team in our org, and or how do they work with sysadmins? Oh yeah, so not where I'm at right now. So where I'm at right now, which is with NOAA, and then I'm subcontracted under General Dynamics with a company called Redline. In that role, we don't directly have site reliability engineers. We have basically the engineering and admin team are kind of all rolled up in one, and where engineering ends and admin begins, and this role is kind of just, we kind of do everything. We built the system originally. I was a big part of building the system. Then I left for a few years and came back, and now a lot of it is like it's kind of the end of its life cycle. So we're just kind of keeping the system running until like 2028. In fact, there's a freeze coming soon where we're not going to be allowed to change things after this big upgrade we're doing. So anyways, where I'm going with that is no, not here. But SRE heavily when I was over in the insurance world and I was the platform engineering lead, I had a whole SRE team. So site reliability engineering team, they were off to the side, and they were really interfacing a lot with we had about 200 dev teams, and those development teams would just be building stuff mostly in Java, some other programs and languages and stuff, but for the most part they would just be laying that on top of our Linux stuff. So then the site reliability engineering team would be really focused on what did those guys do? I would say they mostly were dealing with how those applications were deployed, and then keeping vulnerabilities off of them. But they interacted with us quite a bit on the Linux side of things, for sure. Less with because I also ran the Windows team, right? I don't advertise that very much, but they did less with them, but there still was some work with them. But for SRE roles, I definitely see them out there. And then where else was I seeing them? I'm trying to think. So obviously in that sense they were big. I haven't seen them as much directly on the government side, but there's probably some analog to them that I'm not even thinking of. But they have, you guys know there's the SRE Google books, which are really good. They're free online. Just look up the SRE Google books. There's some really good ones out there. Data sets within ZFS are interesting because granular controls enables for each set, like block size, snapshot policy, thin thick. Yeah. ZFS definitely has some cool stuff. Trevor, I haven't even played with ZFS, and I don't think I've played with ZFS since it was forked over to Linux. Like I think the last time I played with ZFS was on Solaris, because that's where it originally came from, right? Is that what I'm thinking of, or am I crazy? I might be crazy, but I'm pretty sure that's where it all came from, and that's where I used to maintain it. But I haven't ran ZFS in probably 13 years, 14 years professionally. That's weird to say for me, because I don't feel like I'm even that old, But we're all getting older. But Kankle, I see them. Basically, they don't sit directly next to us, but they're closer to us than like the dev teams are typically. And then if you hear people talk about like DevOps is the idea that you're trying to get your dev and your ops teams to work together better. So, sometimes they're called DevOps engineers. Sometimes they're directly site reliability engineers. Those aren't interchangeable roles, but in some companies, the job is the same. Just like, it's like I would say, like I'm a high performance compute admin and engineer on this project, but do I also do all of those other things? Am I also like a storage engineer? Yes. Am I also like a I tell people all the time, once you get into Linux, they just make you do everything because we're the guys that solve problems. We're the guys who can fix things. That's what we do. That's what we're doing. Only doing ZFS on Linux. Nice. Is that picture stuck? Hold on, I want to check this. I feel like that picture is getting stuck. No, that is how it's sitting. Okay. What else do we have here? Linux Labs, So we probably won't do any more Linux labs tonight. Also, the wife should be coming home soon. So, oh, she messaged me. I need to call her back. All right, guys. Buy an HD enclosure that will probably use ZFS. Yeah, Fishman, I definitely would give it a go. If I haven't really thought about the architecture I'm going to use in like a smaller home lab environment, but ZFS definitely sounds like a thing that could be a candidate for it, especially since people are talking about it so much. If I had, you know, unlimited hardware and space, I would absolutely 100% go with Lustre, but I don't have that. And also, we're not going to be, when you start using Lustre and the speed you can get off of Lustre, your switches and your networks become the bottleneck almost immediately. So, but we're not going to be pushing the system like that probably for years. And if we were pushing the system that hard, one of two things would have to happen. Somebody would probably have to be paying us, right? Like the research team of the ProLUG would probably have to be getting paid. And two, yeah, we definitely have to throw a lot of hardware at it. At that point, we'd probably be moving it out of my office over there. So this is, I mean, my office is just the other room, but in the other office where I have my half racks and stuff, I'd have to do that. Yeah, apply for a pro. I'll tell you what, Fisherman, when I get all done with the PhD and I get that out of the way, then I'll start getting some other stuff involved. And actually, the hardware I have isn't that old because I got it from Michael Pessa, and I'm trying to think, he had a pretty fair amount of, like, he was running iSCSI on everything. But for me, I'm not gonna necessarily worry about the iSCSI part, although I can also do that off of those. I'm pretty okay with. Actually, well, iSCSI would make us see. We could be redundant on our. See, this is where the thing where it's like once you start like backing up more and more, you're like, oh, I could get redundancy here, and then my Proxmox servers could go down and up, and I can. But it's already starting to, it's like I just hear cha-ching, cha-ching, like the cash register, and already. So my one big spend next year early is going to be we're going to get some GPUs with that NVIDIA stuff. So we're going to get one of those DGX boxes in here, and then that'll get us some compute. And then I'll get us set up to access that in a different way than people access the normal labs, right? Because we have the normal labs. You guys can get on this right now. Fisherman set that all up if you guys don't know. You can go right into our Discord. You just drop in a key and you can get access to all these, right? Right, these are all our nodes out there that you guys can get into, and we got a whole Bastion environment and that stuff. But yeah, Fisherman, my goal is to eventually stand up. And actually, Fisherman, you might not have been here earlier, but I was talking about the front end for that is going to be open on demand, right? So I will have, where'd it go? I'll have open on demand running, so people will probably have a VPN connection for that, and we'll do some kind of same thing where people will probably drop in their info. I don't know exactly how we'll run that. Maybe we'll just handle that by hand until we get to a certain number of users. But then I'll be able to get them Jupyter notebooks and probably some other basic like stuff to access the cluster with, and then yeah, we'll start building it out from there. But we were talking because I know if you guys don't know, Fisherman does some stuff with Open On Demand as well. Yeah, it's super easy as a front end. You can get like a lot of stuff done with Open On Demand like very quickly. You can get a lot of access to your users, even if your backend cluster is running Slurm or any of these other tools or whatever. Oh yeah, guys, I got to drop. Sorry, the wife's coming home. She wants me to message her, so. We'll drop it here. I appreciate you guys all coming by. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff going on. Check the Discord. We got a lot of stuff hopefully useful to you guys, and I will see you guys later. Take care.